Hey everyone, it's Terrence Branley, and welcome back to another episode of the Grow IT podcast. And today I'm lucky to have Mark Hewitt with me, who is the CEO and founder. I guess president and CEO of EQengineered. And I was going to say founder because I think your previous company was acquired by EQ. Mark's a serial entrepreneur, and so I love talking with my fellow entrepreneurs. But Mark, welcome.
Nice to meet you. Great to be here, Terrence.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your background. I know you've got, like I said, you're a serial entrepreneur. So you've got a lot of, experience with that. Tell us a little bit about your background and your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, just to kind of be brief, I graduated from West Point and was a U.S. Cavalry Officer in the Army. Spent basically the last 30 years in the tech and digital space. So sort of through the dot-com boom, through the mobile multi-channel period, and now focusing on enterprise modernization and digital transformation. Today, and basically over the last 7.5 years, I've had the opportunity to work with a bunch of great collaborators, talented folks at EQengineered. And we're a strategic digital consultancy focused on helping enterprise modernize, develop resilience, and negotiate digital transformation. What that really means is we provide software engineering, data engineering, project and program management, and design expertise. And so a lot of the project work we do is around, software and data modernization, adoption across departmental agile practice, and innovation of the business.
Wow. So let's jump into that. So, enterprise, right? So you're up with the larger, Fortune 1000s, let's call them. And what kind of problems are you helping them solve, or what are they looking to try and do?
Yeah, well, a lot of companies, in our space, it's really about kind of embracing technology and data and best practices for delivery. There's been a lot of movement in that space from what used to be waterfall to agile delivery. And so, I like to say that we really kind of help companies by demonstrating empathy, collaborate effectively in our daily interactions and with them. I believe the right way to deliver our strategic digital consulting work is to model the right behaviors alongside our clients as leader practitioners, and then help coach them and improve current and best practices and patterns, tactics, and techniques that are followed, because they, again, are changing quite quickly. And then empathizing and sharing how best to care for the outcomes and results that we've delivered.
What are some of in today's market, and maybe even, and again, we'll talk a little bit, later on about the AI, right? But what are some of the things that they're trying to solve? What are some of their problems that they're trying to solve now, or may not be, problems? It can be, hey, here's what we're trying to do, Mark.
Yeah.
What,
Yeah,
especially at the enterprise level. I'm always curious.
Yeah, I can sort of, the last 3 or 4 customers have sort of followed a pattern. They had a number of products, or maybe they had done an acquisition or a series of acquisitions, and they might have been trying to standardize the technologies, build a platform, develop patterns of the way that they operated and delivered non-functional requirements like security and design. And so we've done a lot of work, whether it's integrated or independently, or even with other third parties, helping companies to develop cloud-enabled solutions. So they're migrating to the cloud. They're looking at multi-tenant environments. Really, I think standardizing in sort of that platform direction for a lot of clients, so that they have some efficiencies of maintainability and the sustainability of that platform when they go forward.
Is that a result? Are a lot of them still on-prem looking to go to the cloud? Is some of it because they're doing M&A, and some of the acquisitions are, maybe they're working on hybrid and just trying to unify and get everything on the same page type of?
Yeah, it varies wildly. Some companies have been much more conservative in going to the cloud, so it is a wholesale change in migration. Others are looking at multi-tenancy, and so, standardization in the cloud makes it easier to scale up or scale down. So it really, we have some clients who are all on-prem with servers still, and have server rooms that are looking at the migration and trying to understand it. Others have, partially moved and want to make a more aggressive move in that direction. But it really varies by client.
Let's talk success stories. And I always say, success is deemed by, it's like, eyes and the beauty of the beholder type of thing, right? And so it's, it sometimes what we think when we're delivering to our clients, they're to get them to their end result, their solution, what they view as the biggest success sometimes may not be what we initially kind of outlined. And so, but I am curious in terms of at that level, what are some of the success stories that you've engaged in with clients?
Yeah, recently, what I would share too is we fall back on process when people need a little bit of rigor and something that's actual, measurable, reportable, and repeatable. So our process of consulting is to help envision and then educate, and then we call it DARE: discover, assess, roadmap, and execute. So we recently had a large retail financial services organization that was focused on modernization of their application suite and digitally transforming the company. And so their priorities were to establish this next generation software and data architecture, retire and obsolesce outdated, problematic applications and platforms, and frankly, get some cohesion to the way they were moving forward with their data strategy, and then determine, really how they could embrace agile. So this notion of rapid delivery, incremental value being brought forward. We utilized Agile Scrum to break things down into smaller increments and apply a continuous integration approach. And the results that were evidence there were, they were able to get to their new platform direction. We're able to move a number of applications there, which makes it easier to maintain and support. The legacy versions obviously were problematic. So not only was it easier to maintain, but they had a siloing problem of knowledge within specific people on the team. And so diversifying the team by working collaboratively, we were able to kind of expand their number of folks that could address challenges. We also deprecated functionality that wasn't being used. We helped to kind of enhance existing workflows and streamline things where possible. Spent a lot of time helping users, understand the system, do the training. And then I think lastly, one of the areas that on the design side, we provide often reusable components. So a design system that's foundational, reusable, adjustable components that sort of becomes a living library. And in this case, it was all .NET applications, so a lot of Microsoft work.
Man, there's never a lack of things to do when it comes to both people and processes, right? And how long do some of those engagements or projects take? And I wonder, at that enterprise level, if you kind of get into something and all of a sudden it evolves into something even larger.
Yeah, most of our projects are 6 to 12 months at this point. So they're not small in the kind of size and scope. So really important to be able to help our clients understand how we're going to do things. You mentioned process. I mentioned at the beginning, falling back on something that's going to be durable going forward. We try to really ingrain with them to teach those best practices and patterns.
What are the challenges, with related to that? I mean, working with clients in the enterprise level, and like I said, I try to center around the people and processes, because at the enterprise level, you have more people and more processes. What are the large challenges there that you typically see with?
Yeah, and I mentioned agile coming out of sort of the COVID era. A lot of companies, I wouldn't say they got stale, but they got comfortable with what they had done before, and things in our space move very quickly. And so I think the number one challenge is just evolving towards these continuous incremental ways of operating. And it's easy to use the right names. There's a language to it. People talk about ceremonies and stand-ups and the different ceremonies of agile, but actually doing them and living that methodology, where if something isn't a must-have, it goes in a backlog, and maybe you even shrink a scope of what's called a minimum viable product or your first release. And so I think the biggest challenge is helping people through that change management process, both in the mentality of how they're approaching the project as a group, and being comfortable with the fact from often an executive level where there's sponsorship usually, in understanding there's no end state to their ability to enhance and evolve the product over time. So a lot of times, in the old days, you do a big reveal and everyone thought it was a success. Now you do a delivery of an MVP, let's say, or a first generation product, and there's a backlog of work, and you continue to do research to improve that product. So a lot of challenges, I think, in just getting people over the hump of the way in which they're operating in the digital environment.
Well, let's stay on the challenges, and then this one's going to be a little bit easier, I think. The challenges of growth, right? And I know you, being a serial entrepreneur, you've grown multiple, companies, and growth is a great thing, right? Because it means your business is doing well. It's well received in the market. It's a good product market fit, but there are also the challenges that come along with growth. And sometimes just how to get there, because as probably as you can attest as best as anyone, there are different businesses have different growth patterns and different challenges in each. And I guess my question to you is, what are some of the challenges that you face, or what are some of the maybe the choke points that are you're facing in terms of growing EQ Engineered?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, we're a people business because we're a consulting firm. So they are the brand, our team members. And our key focus is on people wellness and care, and ensuring that we have a healthy, fulfilling experience, I think is sort of our job one. We're also a learning culture. I talked about this pace of change. And so, every employee in our company has a training budget, but using that in a way that they both want to learn and is helpful to our customers or customers of the future as we're trying to embrace new directions and technology is important. And if we learned anything during COVID, family and health definitely come first. So aligning things that we can provide to what people find most important. So in our case, it's things like our benefits. We provide 100% premiums on health, dental, and vision.
Wow.
We regularly communicate across all levels of the company to make sure that we're hearing needs in areas in which things can be better. The other one that's might be a little soft, but I think it's really important, is just around improvements in our collaboration technologies. We're a remote first company, and one of the challenges I think we ran into early on was internal and client systems, and making sure that we had the ability to kind of bifurcate those and have private conversations, but also be transparent with our customers what was going on. And so we found it to be critically important to have that duality, and client communications and internal dialogue.
How do you handle that? Because I'm smiling because we go through the same thing, to where we have our own, internal communication methods. And there was a lot of times we're adjusting to our clients in terms of whether they're using different platforms for, communication, scheduling, whatever it may be. And that in itself provides challenges.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I'd have to imagine, because most of our clients are, let's call them small to mid-sized. No, they're small. We'll have some channel partners that are mid-sized, but on the enterprise level, I would think that they're kind of the 800-pound gorilla. And so it's like, you're the one that's going to, when the rubber meets the road, it's going to be, you're the one that's going to be adapting. But I'm curious how you handle that, because it's still a struggle and a challenge for us.
Yeah. So one part is we have pretty rigorous onboarding ways of, onboarding policies for client systems. So when we get involved, we document that. So if we have new team members joining or rotation of folks, it's pretty disciplined. But the other part of that is, we use different systems than our clients often case. So we'll be using Slack for internal communications.
Right. So do
when,
we. Yeah.
when we do invite them to our channels, we're very disciplined about turning them on and off when the times are right. But it's good that we're in different systems mostly than our clients on a project by project basis.
Yeah, and we do the same, and and again, I with especially with our Slack channels, and we'll have different ones we'll set up. We have clients set up on internal ones to where we have their folks in there, and I tell my folks, like, you can't. It's almost impossible to over communicate. So if you're not sure someone's getting the message, then follow up with email, right? Or go onto their system just to say, hey, you know what? I'm not sure if you saw the message on our internal Slack. Would you like me to send it there? Would you like me to email it to you or put it here?
The other benefit I think we have is most of our clients will invite us to their systems as well. So it's, permissioned in that way.
Okay, so let's go to some of the trends in the marketplace. Obviously the default is AI, so I mean that one's a given, right? And so I am curious as to the conversations that are taking place in boardrooms at the enterprise level, the conversations that you're having with management and executives in terms of what do we do, where do we start, how should we figure out how we integrate this into our enterprise level, right? Because there's got to be some degree of caution that they approach it with, but at the
Yeah.
same time, this is one of those areas, and like when you and I came into the business world, the internet was just coming about, right? And I remember the first company I worked for was a 110-year-old company, and they were slow to embrace. I mean, it took a lot just to get them to build out an intranet. And this with AI is going to move at such exponentially, impactful speed that it's not one of those things where folks can wait. And so I'm curious as to the conversations that both you're hearing in the enterprise level as well as you're having with.
Yeah, it's funny. I go to this event called Imagination in Action. It's an MIT event with sort of the leading labs in AI around the world. And every time someone gets up there that's a little bit aged, they say AI has been around a long time. This isn't a new conversation, and I think that's true. I was actually having that exact conversation with our CTO Julian Flax today. So, it's. I think the other benefit, just to kind of put something tangible on it, generative AI has helped companies understand it because we've all played with, open AI or, some other tool. Maybe someone's interested in DALI and they're looking at, generating pictures. Certainly in the Microsoft world,
Copilot.
Copilot's pretty pervasive in people that have that infrastructure. So, the other thing that's happened though with most AI, it's been very much in the sandbox and experiments. And so companies, the Gartner curve, people are sliding down the slope of disillusionment from that hype curve. And they're even experiencing that with generative AI. And so what I think is really important around that is not to beat a drum too many times, but the idea of having a process to fall back on. We've developed a methodology that helps people experiment individually, looking at their methodologies and seeing where the technology may have, say, a 15 to 25% or greater impact, and then conducting some A/B experiences and tests, experiments and tests to see where the efficacy of that result may be. We do that by team. Marketing and sales is a pretty obvious place today, but we're doing it across financial teams, engineering teams, operations teams, and others, research and development. And so, I feel like helping companies through that visioning process and educational piece is how they sort of garner the idea of where something that's frankly just a tool can be valuable to applications, just like any other technology. But people are getting their arms around what AI is through the subset of generative AI, right? And these large language models or natural language processing kind of idea of what that is. Machine learning is a whole nother ballgame, right? And so that's where we're spending a lot of time, frankly, in sort of the workshop mode again, because executive teams have heard a lot of buzzwords. Buzzwords don't make a nourishing meal. Doesn't make a nourishing, buzzword soup doesn't make a nourishing meal.
Yeah.
And so, I think that all the terms that people can't quite understand around linear regression, need to kind of be set aside to bring people through the understanding and education curve of what value it might provide. And, in our world, a lot of that also revolves around great that some companies are very strong at building models, but you also need to make sure that when you deploy those models through an API, that they're conformant with non-functional requirements, technologies that are approved. They can't be sort of R&D teams. They need to be integrated with the CIO and the software teams, data engineering teams, and where they live in the organization. It's pretty important that that's thought of critically, so that you sort of establish the cohesions and the communications with different groups.
So like cross-functional within the organization rather than kind of siloing, to an asset or to an area of the organization.
Yeah, I think it varies across a lot of different companies, but data engineering shouldn't be just by itself. Maybe it should be integrated a little bit with different groups, is my personal opinion. Maybe it stands on its own, reports up through as a kind of a main pillar on the executive team, but should be distributed as a bit of a shared service when there are problems that might be best addressed with AI.
What are some of the what are I was just going to ask, I'm sorry to interrupt, but what are some of the ways that it within the organization further down are implementing or testing AI or LLMs or generative like what are they doing? Are they looking at like saying, hey, this is a process that we know historically has been clearly defined. We know the parameters in there, and therefore it's very predictive. So we know if we implement into a process that has clean and reliable data, that may be the best place to test, and make it somewhat siloed. And I hate to use the siloed word because I just used it in a different context. But I guess I'm just curious as to how they're looking to test and do almost like maybe proof of concept. I'm more curious than anything.
Yeah, I mean, I'll fall back to that process idea. So we spend time thinking about use cases that people feel there could be relevance, whether it's generative AI or AI. It's kind of the same idea, but just to continue with the generative AI notion. So once you have the use cases, we try to kind of pull apart the processes they follow and think about where generative AI might have an impact that would be significant enough that it's worth experimenting. And so, you know, when we get there, then it's a matter of owners and outcomes over what time. And so, having kind of a accountability loop to have the owner of that group. So this is the workshop really outcome that we kind of get to sort of own that result and make it not just actionable, measurable, repeatable, and reportable if it actually evidences, say, 15 to 20% or greater efficiency.
And is that person going across different areas of the organization? Are they kind of spearheading the project and going across all the areas of the organization?
It's currently a little bit of a hub and spoke, right? We'll do the
Okay.
workshop with marketing, then we'll do it with finance, we might do it with engineering. And so there really hasn't been that kind of full spectrum value that they've seen. But I think the hub and spoke model is going to lead most organizations to the employment of not just generative AI, but AI in a way that has a different enterprise value.
Do you think that there will eventually be like a chief AI officer, or do
I,
you think it'll just fall under CISOs or CTOs under their realm?
Yeah, I think data engineer, chief data analytics officers or chief data officers are sort of the title currently. I think that'll persist for a while. Maybe some years down the road that might fall under a CTO further, but it's a unique enough set of skills and understanding that I think it'll persist for a while in that CDO, CDAO world. The other thing that just to throw out there is another trend quickly. I'm taking
Yeah.
an online course for MIT quantum computing this fall from October to December. And, that might be, most people are talking about that being 10 years away before it really takes seed. Hopefully in the next 5 or 10 that will be there. But that's another one that it's yet just another technology. We've seen this pattern before. But I do believe that that's going to be one that is going to be more of an on-demand services. Companies aren't going to be able to build their own quantum capability. And so, staying abreast of what that is and the power of what that is, both because I think it's going to have a market impact on things like security and protocols that are there that, but in the same way that new technologies have come about, it tends to just lend itself to eventually it's just another technology. Maybe it will roll up over time because the skill sets of technology leaders like the CTO or chief digital officer of yesteryear, I think is starting to go away underneath a CTO or a CIO.
So let's talk about the quantum computing because that's kind of come up before. Maybe you can kind of explain or give your take on what will be driving the use. Well, the evolution of quantum computing and then what will be driving the use of it. And like you said, I'm kind of thinking in my head, probably dumbed down. It's almost like having AWS in the cloud where you have quantum computing available to you kind of on demand type of thing.
I think you will. I think what will drive the experiment and usage will be fear, unfortunately, with security. I think it'll be the next big fear period.
Fear, what is it? Fear, uncertainty,
Doubt,
FUD.
yeah.
Yes.
But I do think, yes, I do actually think because of the cost implications of getting it up and running, I think that it'll be much like these large language models that we're all embracing with generative AI. Although I also believe, and I'm not deep enough yet in quantum to say that, there's a whole school of thought that these large language models may not be the future. It might be smaller models that are your own data that you can sort of own and evolve and really enhance and feed and care for. So I don't know where that leads to, but I think initially wave one will be quantum on demand.
Is there any, are those two areas interrelated at all in terms of AI LLMs and the quantum computing, or is it completely, it's not like.
Yeah, today I don't think they're related. There may be intersections, I guess, if I think through that a little bit, but not really today.
What is driving the evolution of quantum computing?
I think the power of compute, right? The speed of compute and that promise of quantum will really change the calculus on, I think, the power of compute.
It's kind of like from back in our day when we had the IBM server room that was massive, and now the IBM server room looks like this type of thing.
I remember when I was at West Point, we were so excited because we were the first college in the country to get personal computers, and we had to pick up 3 boxes and carry them to our barracks, and they were floppy drives. And less than a year later, we had hard drives.
The hard drives.
Yeah. We had discs, and so I think we're in that same period again. It'll be very exciting.
Well, luckily you guys are big and strong there, because I know my son's friends go there and all they're doing is PT, calisthenics, and push-ups. So I'm sure you guys didn't have any problem lifting those heavy, probably 150-pound PCs upstairs and flights.
They were large.
Well, let's talk about the path that a new client takes with you. Maybe if you can kind of walk us through what that process, and I don't want to say typically, because there's no typical, right? Especially in service solutions and IT, but maybe you can kind of walk us through, an overview of what that process. And I think you kind of mentioned some in terms of audit workshops, but what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think the two things that are most important that we do are time to onboarding and frankly, time to offboarding with customers, because I think it's respectful of what they do. And in general, that there's all the standardization, communication channels, technologies, the way in which we deliver the project, the process that's flexible and allows for adaptation with the client's mode of operating. But typically, if I sort of think about our process, we'll sort of ascertain whether the customers need help with strategic planning. So that's sort of our envisioning efforts. We might do qualitative interviews. We might do a survey instrument to gather insights from across the team, or it might just be a series of executive or particular stakeholder interviews. From there, we do a series of tend to be meetings or workshops to help bring people together, socialize, prioritize, and then think about, you mentioned assessments, and oftentimes we'll do a diagnostic or an assessment of some sort to figure out the current state, help to think about best practice tactics and techniques to help bridge that gap so we can apply a level of effort, team size, tooling, approach, experience that needs to be there. Oftentimes at that point, when we talk about research there, it might be developing a persona, which is the kind of client that they're servicing, whether it's internal or external, the customer journey that they're going to undertake. And then, as we kind of take those inputs, we would assign a team. Often our teams are integrated with our clients because, as I mentioned, we're trying to be leader practitioners and pass on these best practice tactics, patterns, and techniques. And so that's my preferred way to deliver, because we want to get our clients efficiently to all the must-haves on their project list, all the backlog items. The hope is that their team can take ownership and evolve that product and maybe do 2 to 4 releases a year to satisfy needs of the business. So that backlog in the agile process, often even through the first project, gets full, and they have to go through a reprioritization effort. But we tend to earn our way forward. I like to think that I call it experience how we think, by actionably working with our customers and modeling the right behaviors, coaching them in the direction of these best practices and techniques. and then empathizing with them and taking ownership of the results so they can continue to evolve those products or services that they've enhanced.
I can see where that drives better results. Does it drive it faster as well? Having your kind of team integrated with theirs to faster adoption?
Yeah, exactly. I think that helps people to learn how to operate in that sort of incremental model, right? That incremental delivery model. But it also, as I mentioned, there's so many new technologies and so many new releases of technologies that we might be helping modernize applications from, not just something like .NET Framework to .NET Core, but levels of enhanced technology that have pretty sizable improvements. And so, we think it's important to take people through that, not just sort of land it on them.
That makes sense, right? Sometimes it's the simplest things and the things that make the most sense are the ones that have the biggest impact. So, as we wrap up here, what's a good way for folks, if an executive of an enterprise level firm or company is watching this and wondering
Yeah.
what's a way that you can possibly help them with their business or their business unit? What's a good way for them to get a hold of you and learn more about EQ Engineered?
Yeah, in our world, most people have done their research by the time that they're reaching out and trying to see if we're authentic about who they've experienced through their own research to who we really are. And so, I encourage folks when I meet them at conferences and what have you, to experience how we think by looking at our Insights tab or our YouTube channel, where our consultants are talking about the way in which we deliver our services. And we focus on helping people experience how we think in those channels. And so, the easiest way to reach out to us would be probably through our website. Our Insights tab has a lot of that expertise. And if that matches what you're focused on and the priorities you have, EQ Engineered has a contact page. I'm also infinitely reachable on LinkedIn. So I encourage people to, join my permission network on LinkedIn. It's the easiest way to reach me. It's open all day long.
I love it. Well, and we'll make sure and put the links to both your website and your LinkedIn profile, if that's okay with you, in the show notes here.
That sounds great.
This has been fun. I've enjoyed our conversation today, and I hope you'll come back so we can keep geeking out on this stuff maybe later on down the road.
No, thank you. If I ever make it to Boise, I will give you a call.
Always welcome. Always welcome. There's always plenty of stuff to do here in Boise. Eating, drinking, outdoors, everything. So just don't let the secret get out, Mark.
It is a great place, I have to say. I like it a lot myself.
Well, thanks again for joining us today, Mark. We'll look forward to catching up in the future.
Thank you.